Come on over.
I'm on your left or right.
Whichever, one on each side.
All right.
There we go. Hello, I'm Elizabeth Warren, and I'm here today with Congressman Mondaire Jones and with Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs, and we are here to introduce our Universal Child Care and Early Learning Act. And I said I was going to take off my mask once we were all together outside here. Child care is infrastructure. Infrastructure is all about people being able to get to work. Roads, bridges, communications, and child care is part of that. For parents to be able to go to work, they need access to high quality, affordable, dependable child care. And yet, in the same way that our infrastructure system in America, roads and bridges, is crumbling, our child care system is on the brink of complete collapse. Today, millions of women, principally, are not able to go back to work because they can't find child care. If this pandemic has shown us nothing else, it has shown us the critical importance of parents having access to dependable child care. So, we recognize that as we build a stronger future for America, a big part of that is rebuilding an infrastructure system, and that infrastructure system must include child care. High quality child care is good for our babies. High quality child care is good for their parents. And high quality child care is good for the workers who provide this care. You know, when President Biden introduced his infrastructure package, he talked about the importance of infrastructure, but he also talked about the importance of the good jobs that rebuilding our infrastructure helps create. That's great. And building building a system that has lots of good jobs in roads and bridge construction is exactly the right thing for America, but we need to do the same with child care. We need to build good jobs for the women who provide the care across America. So we are here today to support a $700 billion investment in child care and early learning. We are here to support an investment in the future of our children, the future of the parents, and the future of their caregivers and teachers. We will fight for all of our babies to have access to high quality care and a bright future. With that, I'm going to give it to Congressman Jones.
Well, thank you so much, Senator, for your leadership. And I'm also honored to be joined by my friend and colleague, Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs of California's. This is an incredible moment in our history where we get to introduce this bill. And I'll just note that when I was running for Congress, I looked to Senator Warren's leadership when developing my own policy solutions for issues like child care and early education. And child care is indeed infrastructure. And child care policy is personal to me. Thousands of children in my congressional district live below the poverty line, and I was one of them. My mom got help raising me from my grandparents, and when daycare was too expensive, my grandmother took me with her as she cleaned homes throughout our district. No kid should have to go through that experience. And of course, to this day, I'm grateful that my mom had the help of my grandmother, because I don't know what she would have done without that help. Too many people, principally, as you heard, women, are dealing with this on a daily basis in this country. That's why, as a candidate for Congress, I made sponsoring this legislation in particular a top priority of mine. Today, more than half of Americans live in child care deserts, and those who are within close proximity to a child care provider often find they can't afford to enroll their child. In more than half of the states in America, a year of child care costs more than a year of in-state college tuition. And New York is one of the 10 least affordable states for center-based infant care. Center-based toddler care and center-based care for an infant in Westchester County, which is in my district in particular, costs $21,000 a year. That's nearly the entire annual income of a family living at the federal poverty line. So our child care system is deeply broken. I'm really proud to have introduced this bill with my colleagues, and I'd love to turn it over to Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs of California. Thanks so much.
Here, go to the other side of Sarah.
Well, good morning. It's great to be here with you all and with my friend Congressman Jones, and especially with Senator Warren, who has been leading the fight for childcare and early childhood education for so many years. I'm excited to be part of the team that's leading the Universal Child Care and Early Learning Act on behalf of the millions of kids and working parents who have been struggling through this pandemic and really need the help. Before I came to Congress, I started and led a nonprofit initiative to address childhood poverty in San Diego County. And even before this pandemic, in one of the wealthiest counties in the country, we had 40% of our kids living in families experiencing poverty. 60% of San Diego families couldn't afford or access childcare that met their needs. And in the state of California, more than half of all families can't afford or access childcare. In the wealthiest state, in the wealthiest country that the world has ever known, this is simply unacceptable. And since the pandemic hit, we know that this has only gotten worse. In San Diego County, more than 500 childcare centers have closed. That's 500 small businesses that our communities relied on, 500 slots of childcare that were already scarce that are getting scarcer. We know that COVID-19 did not create this crisis, but it exacerbated it, and it has shown us all how important childcare is. I'm proud to be one of the original co-sponsors of this bill on behalf of the millions of childcare providers, working parents, and kids who deserve better. And I'm proud to represent the millennial generation, a generation that's living through the second economic crisis in our adult lives, and a generation who knows that we cannot nibble around the edges. We need to reimagine. We have to think differently, and we have to be able to solve these big problems. For decades, we've muddled through with no real model for how working parents are supposed to function in America. And for a lot of folks, this last year was the breaking point, especially for millions of women and people of color. Tomorrow, I'm honored to host Shante Brown as my guest for President Biden's address to the joint session of Congress. Shante is a CA53 resident, a UDW member, and a small business owner, and she's been a child care provider for 24 years. She's been on the front lines of the child care crisis and knows exactly what's at stake if we don't get this bill done. But this bill offers a clear solution: universal access, subsidies to support working parents, and national standards to ensure quality. I'm especially proud that it would make sure no family pays more than 7% of their income on childcare. And what's especially exciting is that we know that it works. We know that Head Start works. We know that pre-K works. We know that early childhood education means healthier kids in the long run. And for those who say we can't afford this, I say we can't afford not to. This is a down payment on our future and the future of our country. Investing in our kids is the best return on investment that we can make. And as we're looking at a changing international landscape and competing with China, making sure that we're investing in our kids is the most important thing that we can do with our national security. So thank you both. I'm honored to be doing this bill with you, and I'm excited that we're going to get it done.
Yes, and we are. So here we go. And we're glad to take questions. How about if we start with any questions around the child care bill? Yes.
Does your plan mesh with what Biden is going to propose and talk about tomorrow?
I sure hope so.
So have you had conversations with him, and are you confident that his plan is going to be big enough?
We're already talking with the White House at multiple levels, and we're here to push for a big enough investment to make certain that every child, every parent, and every caregiver is covered. That's going to take about $700 billion. That's why we put out a letter last Friday about this and why we are introducing our bill today. We have to make a big enough investment to get the job done, not for some of our children, but for all of our children. Yes?
What are you hoping to hear on child care tomorrow in President Biden's speech?
I want to hear that he's committed to getting the job done for every one of our children, for every one of our parents, and for every one of our caregivers. Mondaire, why don't you add? That's known as cold call.
It's a throwback to my days as a student at Harvard Law School.
There we go.
It is something that is of the utmost importance. You heard the statistics today, and what we have the opportunity to do in this legislation, this Build Back Better package, is to transform childcare for many, many millions of Americans who urgently need support from their federal government. We have to treat childcare as infrastructure for the reasons that you heard described earlier. And it's something I think the president will commit to do. It's just a question of at what scale. And that's why we are here pushing him today to do it at a scale that really meets the crisis.
Meet the moment. Sarah, do you want to add anything?
To be honest, I think we should just be excited that we have a president of the United States who's giving his first joint session on the issue of family care and the care economy and how important it is. And I think we need to stay focused on how historic that is, that he'll be delivering that with two women sitting behind him, and that he recognizes that this is a crucial part of building back better and making sure we have an equitable recovery.
Good. Good.
Senator Warren,
Anyone else? Go over here, Sarah. Okay.
the White House reportedly is looking at $225 billion for child care. What is not covered by only doing it at 225? There's a $475 billion difference in your proposal and what the White House is talking about. What in real terms would be left out by 225?
So let me describe what our plan does and why it takes $700 billion over 10 years to get this done. We're talking about child care for every single child in America whose parent wants it, and making sure that that capacity is there in our system. And that's true whether we're talking about what are today child care deserts. It's true about child care centers that today are unlicensed centers who will have a chance with our bill to upgrade and expand both their capacity and the quality of care that they're able to give. Our whole plan is about understanding first the problem and then working from that to what it will take to meet that problem. As I see it, we have plenty of ways to pay for this. We could do it with a wealth tax. We can do it with a real corporate profits tax. We can do it by stepping up enforcement on those who aren't paying their taxes right now. So we've got a lot of ways to do it. We know how big the need is. Literally, millions of parents got knocked out of the workforce or got knocked back on their heels during the pandemic, and millions will not recover unless we get child care that is affordable, that is high quality, and that is available. I'll add one other small part to this, and that is we're talking about ongoing federal investments. We're also talking about building the infrastructure, actually putting investments in to make sure that there's capacity. You know, even parents who have the money to be able to afford child care in much of America can't find it. The problem of child care is not one that affects a narrow slice of parents in America. It affects virtually all parents in America. So we want to make a big enough investment to get the job done. You want to add anything to that, Sarah or Mondaire? Go ahead.
I think I'll add, as I was talking to constituents and voters across the district, this is not a partisan issue. Actually, Republican parents also have a hard time finding child care and also need help getting child care that they can afford, that is accessible, that meets their needs. As I talk to first responders, they can't find child care, especially with the shift hours that they work. And so this is something that really cuts across our whole society, and that's why we need an approach that's going to address it across our society as well.
I will just add, as journalists in particular look at the competing proposals, there are three things that you should be paying attention to, I think. One of which is the level of investment in center-based care. We know that there are child care deserts throughout the United States of America. Also look at whether there is a cap on the amount of, on the percentage of income that parents will have to pay out of pocket. We have ours at 7%. We think that's important, that people not pay inordinate amounts of money for child care in this country. And I would also suggest looking at the way in which we decide to fund this. And we propose any number of ways to raise revenue for the purpose of ensuring that everyone has child care in this country.
I should just add to Mondaire's point. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're talking about child care that is fully paid for a family income roughly of about $50,000 or below. Then it's a sliding scale, but it tops out at 7% of family income. So no one ever has to pay more than 7%. And these will be child care centers that will be open to every child in America.
Now, I'm hearing from licensed child care facilities, the ones that are doing good and the
Uh-huh.
ones that are not receiving the violations and things like that they're concerned that they're going to be put out of business. Your reaction?
Oh, no. I have also talked with many licensed child care providers, and they are among our biggest supporters because they recognize that instead of families having to scrape and squeeze to get enough money so that they can pay for child care, that we are proposing that we make an investment as a nation. And that money comes directly from the federal government to those licensed child care providers. That's going to be a big relief for the providers who can count on a steady income, and a big relief for the parents who don't have to scrape and scratch week to week to be able to afford care.
I'll add to that, actually.
Sure.
During the pandemic, the nonprofit that I founded coordinated the emergency child care for essential workers who were still having to go to work. And as we were working with the child care providers that were still able to stay open, it was clear that they needed more assistance, in part because we're asking them to have smaller sizes right now, and because a lot of the licensing that is required is very expensive. And so making sure that we're providing them the ability to live up to these high standards as we're asking for them, I think will be incredibly important. And I can tell you from all the child care providers that I've been talking to, they're very excited that this issue is being elevated and that they know that help is coming.
Yeah. You know, I want to add one more point on this too. By putting real federal resources into it, we will be able to raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in America. Today, child care centers and preschool centers don't pay low wages because they're mean. They pay low wages because the economics of child care just don't work in America today. Basically, we've built a child care system on the backs of low-wage workers, principally women of color, who have worked at wages that put child care work often below what they could make as a cashier at McDonald's. We want child care workers to be paid commensurate with the responsibilities they take on. We want child care workers to see their work as a real profession, a caring profession that we as a country are willing to honor, elevate, and pay for. So I think one of the reasons that a lot of child care providers are really excited about this bill is they recognize they will be able to pay the people who work for them the wages that these people deserve, and that they will deal with a lot less turnover over time as they build a stronger child care system.
Senator, you have Siobhan over.
Oh,
How are
way
you?
over. You're in the sun. That's how I missed you.
Just a couple more
Sure.
questions on the financing. So is there a cap at which you would no longer get the 7%? And
Nope.
In terms of, okay.
So just so you understand, think of it as a copay. There's no copay if your family income is below roughly $50,000. There's a sliding copay as your family income goes up, but it tops out at 7%. And however high your income is, the most you would ever pay is 7% of your income. And by the way, just so you know, the 7% figure has been used for a long time in federal law, in our CCDBG money, and other federal supports. So we just build off that and say, we're going to do it now and make childcare available for every child. We want every working parent to say, those are top-notch childcare centers. That's where I want my baby. And they can pay up to 7% of their income to get their babies in there.
And then in terms of paying childcare workers more, does the money come directly from the government?
Yes.
Providing a wage subsidy? How does that work?
Well, it's that enough money per child and then per center comes in that there are the resources to raise the wages. Part of a child care center being eligible to receive the federal support means they are paying high enough wages. So the money is coming in from the federal government, and the child care center is committed to raising the wages of child care workers.
We have time for one last question.
Okay, if you want to add anything, add something. Yes.
Senator Warren, on the topic of protecting workers, John Ossoff in the Senate and now Zoe Lofgren in the House are looking into a 2019 Inspector General report of sexual misconduct complaints by janitors in these buildings against members of Congress. What is the Senate's obligation to protect the workers that clean these buildings at night?
Look, we have an obligation to all of our workers. I have not yet seen this report, but I'll look into it.
Thank you.
Yes, I would get one more in.
You know, thank you. So, were you disappointed at all that a number of your priorities were not included in President Biden's initial infrastructure proposal? But are you confident moving forward that things like this and Medicaid expansion will be included?
We have a president who is describing child care as infrastructure. I think it's time to take the win. And now we just want to fill in the details, meaning that just like everyone can drive on the roads and the bridges that we all invest in, everyone will have access to child care. We're in a conversation with the White House. President Biden has identified where he wants to go. We're here just to show this is a path that will get every child covered, every parent covered, and every child care worker covered. And that's why we're willing to fight for it. Want to add anything on that, since that's our last question?
Yeah, I mean, we just passed the most transformative economic legislation for working people in a generation. And what has been proposed by the Biden White House is something that is cause for great celebration. As I mentioned earlier, the issue that I and other progressives have is at what scale? At what scale? And that is why you see legislation nearly double what may be proposed this week in terms of an investment in child care. And so we have to keep pressing. But thankfully, we have a president of good conscience who cares very deeply about this and so many other issues, including a $15 minimum wage, which we will continue to fight for moving forward this year.
We're the never give up constituency. Come on over.
I just want to echo, I think we got to take the win. We have a president who is talking about the care economy, talking about childcare as infrastructure. I really never thought I would see the day when I started working on these issues and trying to push for them before I got here. And as we're looking ahead and we're thinking about our economy and how we build for the future of work, build for the innovation economy, actually the care economy is the solution, because I don't know about you, but robots are never going to be raising my kids. They might help with things around the edges, but we will always have plenty of work to be done as long as we value the kind of care work that has historically been marginalized in our society.
Yeah. So thank you all for being here today. This is an historic moment. We have our toes right on the edge of big structural change. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Fabulous.